Emergency re-enter of the podcast.
Yes.
Chandler and
Come
I
on.
just had a crazy idea. We're gonna live stream. We're gonna live stream the trade deadline tomorrow at 4 on our Instagram. Follow us at @the.pylon if you want to see our live reactions to whatever happens at the trade deadline for the Patriots.
See me melt down. Be there.
A live meltdown. I'll be driving home from class. I don't know where Chandler's gonna be.
I'll be right here. Probably.
Chandler will be there.
Be there or be square. Pretend that's a square.
You guys should come tomorrow. Be there, be square. That's a rectangle, kind of. But we'll do it. Obviously, not very in-depth analysis. We'll save that for Thursday, but just to get our live reactions, that'll be a cool moment. So follow us on the Instagram at @the.pylon.
Yeah.
See you on tomorrow. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the At the Pylon podcast. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. Chandler, how are you doing on this another day with the post-Patriots lost? There it is. There it is.
Oh, no. We suck again. Yeah, we're not good at football. Simply put.
Yeah, and it sucks that I was one of the hopefuls of the many in Patriots Nation, I guess. I guess it was kind of split between 50% were like, it means nothing. And then the other 50 were like, oh, like, maybe we do have a chance after all. But turns out it was not. Patriots lose to the Miami Dolphins by the sad score of 31-17. Chandler, we always start off the episode describing one of the big moments from the game. And I think really a pivotal moment that shifted momentum out of the favor of the New England Patriots was at the end of the first half, coming out of the 2-minute break, the 2-minute warning, I should say. Mac Jones, Patriots offense, take the field just outside of the red zone. Mac Jones takes a shot to the left side of the field on the sideline for Kendrick Bourne on the first play after that 2-minute warning. And he throws a pivotal interception to Jalen Ramsey, was it? Yes, yep. Jalen Ramsey in his return to the Miami Dolphins. His Miami Dolphins debut, actually.
Yep.
Gets a pick, almost take it back for a pick six. Lucky he was pushed out of bounds. He would have been gone if he stayed in bounds. But just a brutal moment for New England. And after that moment, we kind of sensed the entire atmosphere around the Patriots kind of shift a little bit out of that Bills game mentality where we're like, okay, we're a legit team. Like, we're moving past these previous mistakes that we've made. And then we're kind of reverted back to square one with just a brutal interception.
Yeah. As much as I don't think that Mac played especially well against the Dolphins, I think that wasn't entirely his fault. It wasn't a good throw. There's a common thread, as I'm sure I'll talk about later, no velocity on a lot of his balls. He's been trying to float it in. I think that comes down to a little bit of confidence. There's the difference between passing and throwing. Passing the ball is, guiding it to the guy. Throwing it is hot. He's passing the ball right now. And there's a spot for passing the ball. There are situations where you need to pass the ball. That was the situation where you need to throw the ball. Especially when you have not as strong an arm, you need to be throwing the ball more often. And that was a passed ball, goes really high. Jalen Ramsey comes out of nowhere. A very good play by him, really rangy.
Yeah.
That's a very I'm back, I'm still an elite corner in this league kind of play. But it's just indicative of the whole season. There's nothing good going on. You have to play a perfect game to have a decent result, to have a close game even.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I will say, being the captain of the Mac Jones support ship, I will say that I don't think the throw was really as much his fault as people are blaming him to be, because like you said, it was just an outstanding play by Ramsey. There was not enough juice on that ball. You can say that all day, and I definitely agree with you there. But it's more, to me, it was the timing of the interception. Like, we just can't, like, it was just a terrible moment to do something like that, because if you think about it, if we just keep the ball, if Mac just throws it away, if he's able to read the play a little bit quicker and possibly realize that Ramsey's going to come and swoop that out of the air, maybe we would be able to cash in because, we still had timeouts. We still were just at the cusp of entering the 2-minute warning phase.
Yes.
So there was plenty of time to make something happen. And in that situation, Matt kind of reverted back to that mindset of, I got to get the play done now. Like, we got to, take a shot to the end zone, get this touchdown, get back on the board.
And
when in reality, go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say.
And that ensured us to be down double digits going into halftime. All 6 losses we've had this year, we've been down double digits at halftime. Unacceptable football. We're not a good enough team to make comebacks, so we can't be down by double digits.
Look what happened against the Bills, Chandler. We led that game for the majority of the contest. That's part of why.
We led against the Dolphins. We scored first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the majority of the game we led against the Bills.
I know. Yes.
But you're right. I mean, we did have a lead against the Dolphins, and that kind of deteriorated pretty quickly. And part of the reason because of that is just, to me, it was a talent issue because playing a team like the Dolphins, we knew it walking into this contest. We thought that the Pats maybe had a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel if guys like Tyreek Hill and Raheem Mostert ended up sitting out. Both guys played. Mostert was a lot quieter than he was in his first matchup against the Patriots this season, but Hill was dancing all over the field and ripping us to shreds.
First time he's ever got 100 yards against Bill Belichick, I believe, or at least since Patrick Mahomes.
And he hit 1,000 yards on the season.
Yep,
at week 8
since like the 60s.
That's ridiculous. But regardless,
against us,
what better fitting way to do it with this season in mind? But yeah, the timing of that interception is really what killed us there because had we gotten in the end zone there, this would have been a completely different game. And I won't say that our second half play was necessarily bad. It was just we were in too deep of a hole to climb out of playing against a very talented team like Miami. But I will say that part of our struggles, and again, I don't agree with the people who are saying this is all to blame for this game, and without this factor, we would have won. It was the officiating. The officiating was really bad. Probably the worst
across the whole league this year.
Yeah. And this is probably the worst officiated game I've seen from a Patriots standpoint throughout this season, I'd say by a pretty sizable margin. First off, we had that brutal J.C. Jackson DPI, which was called. That was a really bad call considering how they've played the DPI call throughout the rest of the season. It's very much been like a let them play kind of thing, especially in the red zone.
Absolutely.
So to me, that was just up in arms. Like that's BS. Another one, the flag pickup on the illegal man downfield. The Dolphins would have been set back to a 3rd and 16 if that flag stayed on the field. Refs are like, oh, no, we're going to pick it up. And they ended up calling the wrong number in the first place. The commentary team pointed out they didn't call the actual guy who was a good 20 feet in front of the play. They called somebody else's number, and then they decided to pick up the flag, which was, to me, just stupidity. Third, the helmet-to-helmet hit on Devontae Parker. Deshaun Elliott absolutely wrecked him.
Yeah.
And then the Dolphins had the audacity at the end of the game to get all pissed at Juju Smith-Schuster for his hit when that was relatively clean. I mean, of course, you didn't have to deck the guy like that and if the game's over, but that hits clean. The whole Miami clears the bench to basically fight him when in reality, the Parker hit earlier in the game was much worse and there was no flag on that. And of course, they threw flags on Juju for his quote-unquote celebration after the hit, where he stood over him for about 0.5 seconds, which I thought was another ridiculous call.
Yeah.
Finally, this one we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, Chandler, the forced fumble call by Jelani Tavai. He punched the ball out. There was no whistle. You can argue, and you'll argue the same thing, that it was stop of forward progress. But to me, it's just sloppy on behalf of the officials to blow that whistle so late. The ball was on the ground for like 2 seconds, and then they blew the whistle.
Yep.
So it was just kind of ridiculous to me. But why don't you walk me through how much of an impact you feel that the officiating had on the Patriots?
Oh, it's huge. And I also feel as though, as much as I love this Miami offense, you see so many times they had all of their orbits, which is when they do a lot of orbit returns, when you run somebody around the back of the quarterback and then they come back the same way. It's really effective. It really messes with the defense, and you can really tell what coverage a team is in. That's really important. There were a lot of times where they would do that, and then someone else would also be in motion. That's not allowed.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
only allowed to
yeah.
have one person in motion.
That's what Bill Belichick was flipping out about at the end of the
Yeah,
first half. We
there
all
were at
thought it was the
least
pass interference, but
no, there were
yeah,
at least three times off the top of my head that happened, and we are seeing that all throughout the season. That is essentially a no call. We've seen um, illegal motion with the Chiefs week one against the Lions with
yep.
too many men in the backfield. We've seen this just so many times, and the league is being very selective about how they're calling certain things, and it's getting to the point where I shouldn't say it's getting to the point it has been at the point where you have to analyze the referees before the game and figure out what you're going to get called and what you're not going to get called. We're seeing this every week. We're seeing this across all sports, but very specifically in football right now. But
And
as
it's
for how it,
yeah.
yep, sorry,
No, go ahead, go
go for
ahead.
it. But as for how it actually affected the Patriots, when you're not a good team, you need momentum plays. We're not getting
Mhm.
momentum plays by throwing the ball downfield. I don't believe that we had a single throw beyond 20 yards
Nope,
this week. We
nope.
didn't last week. I don't know if we did the week before. I remember they talked about it on the broadcast, which is why I remember that.
Probably because
I think we had one, yeah.
yeah, it was the game
Yeah,
against the Raiders, right?
yeah, we had. I don't know if air yards we had 20 yards, but besides the point, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
We're not throwing the ball deep
we're
regardless.
not getting chunk yard plays. We're getting 7 yard plays, 5 yard plays, -3 yard plays. Like I don't know, we're not able to get these plays organically, so we need to do them. A refereeing call can be huge. A DPI would be massive. We can't afford to lose the penalty battle, and we have lost the penalty battle, be it our fault or not.
And I wouldn't even say that this game, like other games throughout the season, was an issue of like, we're not disciplined. We're not playing disciplined football. For the most part, I thought a lot of our penalties were just unjust. And for the most part, I thought that we played a pretty clean game. Of course, we had our usual Antonio Maffi, false start, whatever,
Yeah,
hold. Those are going to be present in any game when you have those types of offensive linemen in, sadly. But for the most part, I thought on paper it was a pretty clean sheet, other than those brutal calls on behalf of the refs. But yeah, did you have? I thought you were
no,
gonna say
that
something.
was pretty much all I was gonna
But
say.
yeah,
City Sow and Antonio Maffi were uh, splitting snaps today.
yeah,
We'll see how that goes past the deadline.
I was happy that Verdarian Lowe wasn't in, but it was because of an
Yes,
injury. So
yeah.
I guess if he was healthy, he would have been in. But I guess it worked out regardless. I mean, not enough because we lost. But let's talk about some more positives, I guess, because like I was kind of saying before we started recording, Chandler, this game is even more painful in the sense that it's not that we were deserving to win at the end of the day, but we showed a lot of signs of promise that we deserved to win other games throughout the season, perhaps. Not deserved, but we should have won games throughout the rest of the season. Now, talking about some positives, let's start with the run defense, Chandler. We
Mhm.
basically shut Raheem Mostert down in a game where in week 2, he shredded us. 2 touchdowns, I think over 150 yards rushing. He popped off. We contained the Miami Dolphins run defense, and it showed on behalf of their offense. How much of an impact did you feel that the Patriots had in shutting down Miami's run defense? I mean,
I
run
think it was
offense.
yeah, I think it was really important. Miami has the number one rush offense or had the number one rush offense coming into the game. I assume that they probably don't coming out of it, and that's a pretty impressive thing for the Patriots. However, clearly it didn't really have any effect because they still scored 31 points. It's so easy to say we had a good run defense, good job team. If they have 200-yard receivers, what does it matter?
Exactly. And we saw both Hill and Waddle shredding it up
Exactly,
in
both
terms of
100
that.
yards.
But both of our offensive scores, at least with touchdowns, I thought were pretty positive circumstances, especially that
Yeah.
last throw to Juju. Obviously, we saw the electric touchdown off the interception by Duggar. Our whole defense, I thought, played pretty well today, especially Kyle Duggar. He shined. And I think we'll get into this later when we talk about the trade deadline, is that's tomorrow at the time we're recording this.
Yep.
I don't want to see him go, but we'll discuss it a little bit
We'll talk
later.
about it. Yep.
Regardless, our secondary playing against a very tough receiver core, like you said, And, they were putting up over 200 yards in the receiving game comfortably against us. But guys like Duggar, we got some turnovers. We had that fumble that Miami totally screwed up at the beginning of the second half. And when we were in the red zone for the most part, we were cashing in pretty effectively. We had that touchdown to Bourne, as I said. That clutch touchdown to Juju really gave us a chance to kind of corral and have a shot to score and tie this game. Of course, that didn't happen. But my one gripe with the red zone offense was off that turnover that I was talking about at the beginning of the second half. We got it deep in Miami's end. And this is a point where we're like, okay, with a touchdown here, we're going to make up for that pick that we had earlier, but nothing. No touchdown. We had to kick the field goal from, 35 yards? Not even.
Something like that, yeah. Maybe even a little less.
That, to me, it just ties back to this talent issue of a lack of dynamic wide receivers to keep up with Miami's defense.
Oh, sorry, say that again. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, just like it was just a dynamic Miami defense versus a mediocre Patriots offense in a lot of circumstances.
This is the most electric offense in football. I've said it every time. They talked about it briefly on the broadcast. They're so explosive. You see, we talked about it last time we played the Dolphins. I think that this was a much more reflective score of the talent gap between these two teams. But there was that one play, just like last time, where Jalen Waddle catches a little tunnel screen, gets really good blocking, and they turned a 3rd and 12 into a 4th and 1, which then became a conversion, which then became a touchdown. This is what you need to succeed. Demario Douglas is the mold. He's a much lesser version of that, of course, but he's the mold of that kind of player that you need. And we don't have that player, and they do. And we're also on our 17th cornerback guarding the best wide receiver in the league. There's not too much I can really be upset about other than circumstance and how this season is just cursed because of all of the injuries.
Yeah, and I will say this before we kind of transition to another point. If it wasn't for games previous to this one, like the game against the Raiders, the blowout against the Saints, those were games we could have comfortably won walking into it, at least. Of course, once the game for the Saints blew away, you didn't really think that we had any sort of shot in that game. But the Vegas game, that's a game that you could win, especially when you're playing like this. If we played like how we played against the Dolphins today, or yesterday, I should say, I'd say we'd win that game against the Saints and we'd win that game against Vegas. But regardless, our stupidity and poor play at that kind of middle ground of our first 8 weeks of the season, I should say, has really hurt us in the sense and turned a season that could be right now, we could be 4-4. We could be kind of jousting at getting into the wild card, especially with a pretty easy 5-game stretch coming up at us. But no, now we're 2-6. We're the bottom of the barrel. And going into the trade deadline tomorrow, Chandler, there were a lot of questions around this Patriots team and what they're going to do. Now, in previous weeks, Belichick and the rumor around him has been that he's not going to sell out. We're buying in on this season. It's not a wash. We saw in 2020, like you brought up on last episode, we didn't sell at 2-5. Now we're 2-6. And the idea around this, at least before the Miami game, was that we weren't going to sell. That loss might make things a little bit different. And I guess maybe the first point to start with, transitioning off that Dolphins game completely now from talking about their extremely talented wide receiver core, the most dynamic player we had on offense that was a potential trade chip come the trade deadline was Kendrick Bourne. We saw him go down with a torn ACL. The report just came out this morning in yesterday's game against the Miami Dolphins. So that basically takes him off the trade market. He's not going anywhere, which maybe will work out because now he has to kind of hang around for next year. So it'll be nice to have him back. But regardless, when this guy was playing pretty great considering the offense around him, it's brutal because we probably, I think at least, maybe we could have pulled a 3rd-round pick for him at most, which could have been really beneficial to our draft capital. But regardless, going into this trade deadline tomorrow, Chandler, I guess the main point to start with, is Josh Uche. He sat out Miami's game yesterday. He sat out last week against Buffalo as well with, I believe it was a toe injury.
I think so, yeah.
But to us, that's a little bit questionable. He didn't even make the trip to Miami. Could he be on his way out? We've seen a lot of rumors circulating about the Jaguars trading for him. Apparently, there's a lot of league interest in Uche right now. Where do you see him landing if the Patriots, I guess, decide to move him? I guess that would be question one. Do you think the Pats are going to move him?
Yeah, I think that we should, and I think that we will. I think that the fourth is probably the number, or it's probably the value. The Jaguars have been getting a lot of heat towards it, but I think that there are really a lot of teams that could use him. I really don't think there's a team that can't use him. He is a situational pass rusher. While he isn't good really at all in run defense, he's not especially talented at setting the edge. He knows how to get after the quarterback. He's had a lot of sack production in his career coming as a second round pick. Second round pick. I think that he should go somewhere, and I think Jacksonville is probably the place. Where there's heat, there's fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's my prediction for him. A fourth round pick this year, fourth round pick specifically, 2024, fourth round pick for Josh Uche.
That didn't even click for me at the start. A fourth rounder. It seems like he's kind of dropped off in value.
Yes and no.
Or do you just think that maybe the prediction of what we were going to get is a little bit high on the high ball side? I mean, as much as we would have been happy with that.
Historically, if you look at mid-season trades, they never involve first round picks. I can't remember the last time one.
I don't think we're going to get a first for him.
And they very rarely involve seconds unless it's an elite player or Mohamed Sanu. Oh, man. You see, like, what did Kevin Byard just got traded last week from the Titans to the Eagles? He went for Terrell Edmonds and a sixth, I believe, off the top of my head, which is roughly the value of a third, and he's an all-pro player. So historically looking at that, it's probably a fourth. A third is for a top-tier player. 2 seconds is Christian McCaffrey. So that's your ceiling.
What did the Dolphins get for Bradley Chubb? Do you remember? Was it a second?
I think so. I think it was, yeah. So yeah, look it up. But also, all-pro player, top-tier player. He's much better than Uche. Not much better than Uche, but much better in terms of historical production at the time.
Oh, come on. Are they not going to give me the...
I'll find it.
Oh, look. The Dolphins gave Denver the San Francisco 49ers first-round pick in 2023, a fourth-round selection in 2024, and running back Chase Edmonds.
Wow.
That's a big haul.
That's a sizable haul. But also, Bradley Chubb was the seventh pick in his draft, seen as a generational edge rusher alongside Von Miller at the time. I think that is a much higher value because Bradley Chubb also better in coverage, better at run, way better at run defense. Uche, at his floor, is rotational because you can't use him when it's a known run situation. He's not especially strong there. But if you just need someone to sprinkle in to supplement a really strong pass rush already, like Jacksonville can have, I think that's the play. Fourth round pick, and I'd be fine with a fourth round pick.
I'd be disappointed with a fourth round pick, don't get me wrong. But I mean, at this rate, when he's definitely going to leave in the offseason, there's no way we're paying the big money to keep him.
No talks even.
No talks, nothing. I'd just be happy to get something at this rate, which as much as I'd appreciate a second round pick for him, because I do actually believe if he's going to a team that's desperate for pass rush talent, Uche is the guy that you want for that. I believe, what did he have, 13 or 14 sacks last season, right?
I think it was 13 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, 13 and a half. So it's clear that the guy can get to the quarterback. If a team is desperate enough to cough up a second round for him, you're definitely taking that. But in terms of a fourth round pick, I guess I'd take it. But maybe we'll fall somewhere between a third, a fourth and a second, I should say. Maybe we'll go to the third too. But regardless, I think we're both in on Pat should trade Uche. The question surrounding Belichick doing that, whether or not, is another question. But regardless of that, there are plenty of other players on the team right now, Chandler, that have kind of been presumed to be moved. I know that before the episode, we were talking about Pharaoh Brown's outbreak these past couple games
Yep.
throughout the season, especially against Miami. You said he outsnapped Mike Gesicki, right?
Yep. 21, 23 to 15, I think.
Yeah.
21 to
So,
15, one of those.
and he's been
Yeah,
he's been looking great,
he has.
Farrell Brown. I think that's
Yeah,
not a
my
piece that we
theory,
appreciated as much. Go ahead.
yeah, my theory is that Gesicki's going to get moved, and he's, you know, he's a pretty good tight end. He's not bad. Um, literally just got him, but I think that again, it's going to feel like these are all very low values, but when your team stinks, you're not necessarily able to get top value, and we may be able to get a little bit more for um Gesicki than market because of his contract, because he has multiple years left. That's another aspect that I didn't talk about with Uche. You're not able to get as much because he's going to be a free agent. You have to recoup something. For Gesicki, I think it's a sixth, maybe a fifth, maybe a fifth. I think it's a sixth though.
Yeah, well,
Maybe a
I
conditional fifth becoming a sixth.
that's yeah. I'd say that's fair, but a question now that's circulating, especially following this Miami loss, Chandler, is who in that tight end room is going to be moved. There are apparently rumors circulating right now. Hunter Henry was asked about it after the game right now,
Yeah.
yesterday, I should say, regarding whether or not he was listening to trade rumors. Henry just said, quote, I don't pay attention to it. One thing to highlight is that Hunter Henry is in a contract year right now. After this season, he's a free agent. Now, I know he's a captain of the team, but there have been things circulating about whether Henry will be moved instead of Mike Gesicki. Now, I'd be more on the boat to move Gesicki because in reality, I feel that him and Henry have played pretty equally so far this season. And Hunter Henry, I guess, has more leadership prowess in that locker room. So I'd be more prone to moving Gesicki over Henry because I'd say similar to you. I don't think we could pull more than a fifth round pick for him right now, which is kind of sad
Yeah.
to say. But
Yeah,
yeah,
there's not a single player on this team that doesn't have a price. Hunter Henry started the season really strong and has not looked this good since. So if somebody wants to come in for a fourth for him, I am giving him his walking orders, saying goodbye. Thank you so much for being our only good player for 5 weeks. I really appreciate it. But please go off, go have an offense that will get you touches and touchdowns. Have fun, enjoy football again, because I'm sure not a lot of people are enjoying football right now in this Patriots team because we're not enjoying watching it, so they're probably not enjoying playing it.
now Chandler, I have a couple players here listed that have been thrown into trade conversations.
Yep, I got one too, but I'll save it at the end because I want a few of
why don't
them.
you start with your design packages and then I'll kind of go into some more that are circulating around because just so I don't take yours.
Sure. I really only have one big one that I don't think that you'll have on yours, but
Okay.
I want to save that one for the end. I'll come up with a couple others. Um,
Oh well, no. If you want to save it, then I'll go for these. Then
I do have one little point here.
go for
So
it.
I was watching an interview with Mike Tannenbaum, uh, head of the 33rd team and UMass alum, sport management alum. Shout out. Um,
Nice.
and he has worked with Belichick in the past. He worked with him when he was in Cleveland, and he has been the GM of the Dolphins and player personnel, or GM of the Jets player personnel for the Dolphins. He's been in all the way at the very top of decision making around trade deadline times, and he's always talked about, and he did talk about a couple of days ago, how Belichick operates his teams similarly to how Warren Buffett operates Berkshire Hathaway, with a very long term view. So that tells me not necessarily that he's going to be unwilling to sell, because I think that he would be willing to sell in the right situation. But what it tells me, and this feels weird to say, but I don't necessarily disagree with it, he may be open to buying. And I don't mean buying to win this year. I mean, if someone's like, this is obviously not going to happen, but theoretically, let's say, Cardinals stink, they're going to get Caleb Williams. Kyler Murray's going to come back next week. Who wants him? We're getting rid of him. I don't think Bill would be like, we're not going to be good this year. We don't, it's not worth our time. If he sees value in an asset for multiple years and he can get it for a decent price, I don't think that he would say no. Having said that, I also don't think he would say no to trading some players. I don't think Duggar is one of those players. I think Duggar is going to stay, though I'm sure that there are a lot of rumors going around about him. I don't think anyone on the offensive line would get moved. Maybe on Wenu, because we have because I talked about how we had Mafi and Sal both playing snaps at guard.
That would really suck.
That would
Our
suck. We
offensive
would be
line is
so
really
bad.
gonna really bad.
Yeah, I don't. But at the same time, I don't think he will get moved because of how many injuries there have been and how little consistency there's been. I think that's probably it. If somebody wants Adrian Phillips, I would consider moving him for around a sixth again. Everybody from this point on, I think is probably conditional fifth to sixth, and that's the best we're gonna get for them. Maybe even there'll be players like Adrian Phillips could be a seventh swap. We get a sixth, they
Wow.
get a seventh, and Adrian Phillips get something. But tell
Yeah,
me what
well,
you think. Yeah,
let's move into what Greg Bedard has been saying for from Boston Sports Journal. He's said a lot in these past couple days about potential Patriots moves. One surrounding Juju Smith-Schuster. Pats
I'll
are
get him out.
quote
Whatever, I don't care.
supposedly quote closely listening to offers for Juju Smith-Schuster.
And no one's
Who's even
talking.
going to want him at this rate?
Yeah,
I don't know, but Josh Uche being that number one listed guy to get moved before the deadline, he's been on the top of the list since a couple weeks ago. Now, Bedard went on to say, quote, from what I'm hearing, it would take a big offer, at least a third round pick, likely more, to get the Patriots to budge on anyone else major. Those
yeah.
people including Kyle Duggar, Hunter Henry, Mike Uwenu, or Trent Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Then he also said, quote, however, the Patriots would listen more closely on Adrian Phillips, Jalen Mills,
Yep.
Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
Trading Elliott would be a real coup who signed for nothing and offloaded it to a contender for something,
That
possibly.
would be impressive. Yeah,
That
that'd
would be
be
a good
a little
move
slick.
on Belichick's part, as sad as it would to see him go because he's really performed well this season.
Yeah.
But seeing Henry listed into that, we wouldn't budge unless if we get a third or more for a guy like Hunter Henry, just maybe setting his market value higher than what we just perceived it to be. If somebody gives us a third for Hunter Henry, I am slamming that right away. Like he's got to be gone.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
a guy like Kyle Duggar, I said it at the top of the episode. I don't want him to move.
Yeah.
I think he could be a long-term Patriot. He could stick around for this rebuild. And Belichick seemingly is thinking the same thing. Rumors have been circulating that he wants to hold on to Duggar. He wants to keep him around long-term. And considering that Belichick just signed a lucrative contract extension over the offseason, he might get his wish there. But why don't you go into your
I found something out about that, or I shouldn't say I found something out about that. Media found out something about that it only goes until 2024. So it was a
oh,
big contract extension. It's only for a year.
wow.
So his contract expires after next year. What that means, I don't necessarily know, but I think that won't change his long-term plan or his short-term plans. But do you have anybody else? Because I have my
No,
little
that's
quick
my
one to talk
list.
about.
Go for it.
So I don't think this is going to happen. However, Tyrod Taylor, Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins, what do they all have in common?
They're all injured.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Who do you
It's the
think?
Mac Jones subject.
I think it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen, but there are rumors saying that the Patriots wouldn't take anything less than a third. I hope not. I hope we don't trade him for less than a third. If we get, say, a conditional second that if he throws for a certain amount of yards or a certain amount of touchdowns or something, and if he doesn't, we get a third. Are you saying yes to that? I'm not sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
because I don't trust Belichick to go full blown tank. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Like
I'm
he's gonna
with
be
you.
sweating to get these stupid wins, and then if we drop to pick 7 or 8, we're done. Like we're
Yeah.
not. Mac Jones is gone, and then we're not getting a quarterback.
Yeah.
Like that. That would just be that would be like slam the red button emergency moments. Like I'd be completely out on this team's future for at least the next 5 years at that rate.
Yeah. Speaking of picks, speaking of draft picks, where we are, we currently have the fourth best odds to get the fourth odds in the draft right now. And there's a lot of talk about there are quarterbacks. If you're at 4, you can get a quarterback that is a good quarterback, probably. Or you can get Marvin Harrison Jr., who we talked about last week. Shameless plug. Go watch that.
I think that would be elite if we keep Mac Jones to get Marvin Harrison
So
Jr.
that's the talk. Mac Jones has one more year in his rookie contract at that point. Cap wise, it makes sense to keep him.
and
But
then
if you think,
buy in.
yeah,
We're gonna have a.
but if you think he stinks so much, you got to get rid of him. Having
I
said
don't.
that,
I
yeah,
just don't. I
I'm
don't think
not
he's.
saying one way or the other. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's the scenario that is being played around.
Well, what would you trade him for? What if you were the Patriots GM right now and somebody pitched you an offer? What would it take to chip Mac Jones
Give me
away?
a second. If you give me a second, he's yours.
You'd send him for a second?
Yep.
I don't know, dude.
Because if you send him for a second, you get a better quarterback in the offseason, and then you can get help with that second round pick.
I'm taking a first from the Vikings because the Vikings in that case would be very much on the boat of like we're trying to contend. Like you can take our
I don't
first.
know if they are necessarily because with Justin Jefferson out, I think that they're realizing that their 13-4 season last year with 8 wins that were a score or less was a little bit fluky. But talking a lot about talking about that situation this upcoming week on Thursday, I'm going to be talking about the situation where we keep Mac Jones and with that top pick, draft him some help on the offensive line because Trent Brown is out. So we're going to talk about Joe Alt, left tackle out of Notre Dame, considered one of the best tackle prospects in the last 20 years. He's up there with a what's his name out of Oregon, who's excellent. I can consistently forget his name.
I have nothing, bro. I'm sorry.
Out of Oregon, who plays Panay Sewell. Didn't even need to look
Okay,
it up.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's considered one of the top prospects. There are a lot of generational prospects in this draft. So if we stink, we can get one of them.
That'd be great.
We do stink.
Regardless, we look forward to that rookie preview this upcoming Thursday, as well
Yes.
as a full recap on what the Patriots decide to do with the trade deadline. It
Yeah.
better be something, or else you're going to expect a very angry podcast on Thursday. But regardless of that, hopefully the Patriots make some moves, whether it is or what it's not, what we put forth today. It's important that the Patriots do something at the trade deadline, and we'll be here to recap that and preview their game this upcoming Sunday as well. And I am blanking who we're playing. That's great. I'm going to the schedule. Here we go. Oh, the Commanders. Great. Washington
The
Commanders.
most sacked team of all time at this point in the season. They're on pace to break the sack record or at least going into last week. They were on pace to break the sack record by 20.
What a great way it would be to start if, God forbid, we traded Mac Jones and then play the Commanders. We
And then
just
Sam Howell
sack
throws
the
for 400
absolute
yards.
living hell out of them. And then we win that game and we go 3-6. And then we're one step away from getting a quarterback.
Commanders almost beat the
Jones.
Eagles last week, 38-31. Sam Howell looked like a boss. 300 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, I think.
Hopefully we lose if we do end up selling out.
Crazy, yeah.
But regardless, we'll talk about that game and more, as well as the entire trade deadline on this Thursday's episode. Until then, alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. We'll see everybody on Thursday. Good luck to the Patriots at the trade deadline.